The rain tapped a mournful rhythm on the car's roof as Emily drove me to Sunset Pines. My daughter's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles pale, her jaw set in that stubborn way she'd inherited from her mother. I sat in the passenger seat, my cane resting between my knees, staring out at the gray world blurring past. At 75, I'd seen enough of life to know when someone was avoiding eye contact. Emily hadn't looked at me once since we left our house. The one I'd built with my own hands, brick by brick, for her and her mother decades ago. "Dad, it's for the best," she said finally. Her voice clipped, rehearsed. "You can't live alone anymore. The doctor said your heart, and the stairs, it's not safe." I didn't answer. What was there to say? She'd made up her mind months ago. Probably the moment she found out I'd rewritten my will. The house, the savings, the shares in my company expected it all. Instead, I'd left most of it to charity, to the community center I'd founded, to the people who'd stood by me when she hadn't. Emily didn't take kindly to that. She never did like being told no. The sign for Sunset Pines loomed ahead, its letters faded but still legible against the peeling green paint. The car slowed, and my chest tightened not from my heart condition, but from the weight of what was happening. My own daughter, my only child, was leaving me here, not because she cared about my health, but because I'd become an inconvenience, a liability, a reminder of promises she hadn't kept. We pulled into the parking lot, and she finally turned to me, her blue eyes cold, like the winter sky. "They'll take good care of you here, Dad. It's a nice place. Top-rated." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Nice place. Top-rated. Words she'd probably read off their website. She didn't know the half of it. Sunset Pines was one of my facilities, part of the network of nursing homes I'd built from the ground up through my company, Horizon Care. I'd started it 30 years ago, after watching my own father waste away in a poorly run facility. I'd vowed no one else would suffer like that, not on my watch. And now, here I was, being checked into one of my own creations by a daughter who thought she'd washed her hands of me. The lobby smelled of antiseptic and lavender, a combination that always made my stomach turn. A young nurse with a bright smile greeted us, her name tag reading Sarah. She was new. I could tell her enthusiasm hadn't yet been dulled by the realities of the job. "Mr. Harold Grayson, right?" she asked, glancing at her clipboard. "We've got your room all ready. It's one of our best, with a view of the garden." Emily handed over my suitcase without a word, her movements brisk, like she was late for an appointment. Maybe she was. Maybe she had a life to get back to that didn't include me. "I'll visit soon," she said, her voice flat, already turning toward the door. "Get settled." "Okay." I watched her go, her heels clicking against the polished floor, her silhouette disappearing into the rain. She didn't look back. Not once. Sarah led me down a long hallway, her chatter filling the silence. "You'll love it here, Mr. Grayson. We have activities, great food, and the staff is like family." I let her talk, my mind elsewhere. The hallway was too familiar. I'd walked it 100 times during inspections, back when I still ran Horizon Care day to day. Before I'd stepped back, handed the reins to a board of directors, and trusted them to carry on my vision. Before Emily decided I was too old to matter. My room was small but comfortable, with a single bed, a wooden dresser, and a window overlooking a modest garden. The roses were in bloom, their red petals stark against the gray day. I sat in the armchair by the window, my cane leaning against the wall, and let the reality sink in. This was my life now. A room in a nursing home. A daughter who couldn't wait to leave me behind. But Emily didn't know everything. She didn't know I still held the majority shares in Horizon Care. She didn't know I'd built safeguards into the company, ways to keep my influence even after I'd stepped away. She thought she'd dumped me here to fade away. Out of sight, out of mind. She was wrong. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my old phone. The one I'd kept despite Emily's insistence I didn't need it anymore. I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over a name, Margaret, my old assistant, now the COO of Horizon Care. She'd been with me from the start, loyal to a fault. If anyone could help me turn this situation around, it was her. Mr. Grayson. Sarah's voice pulled me back. She stood in the doorway, holding a tray of tea and cookies. I thought you might like a little something to settle in. I smiled. The first real one I'd managed all day. Thank you, Sarah. That's kind of you. She set the tray down and hesitated, her eyes soft with something like pity. It's hard. I know. The first day always is. But you'll find your place here. I nodded, sipping the tea, letting its warmth spread through me. She was right, it was hard. But not for the reasons she thought. This wasn't about adjusting to a new home. This was about reclaiming what was mine. Emily thought she'd won. Thought she'd tucked me away where I couldn't embarrass her, couldn't challenge her. She had no idea who she was dealing with. As Sarah left, I dialed Margaret's number. The phone rang twice before her familiar voice answered, crisp and professional as ever. Harold, is that you? It's me, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I need your help. Margaret, I'm at Sunset Pines. A pause, then a sharp intake of breath. What? How are you there? Emily, I said simply. But don't worry. I've got a plan. And as the rain continued to fall outside, I began to lay it out. This wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. The first week at Sunset Pines passed in a haze of routine. Breakfast at 7. Activities at 10. Lunch at noon. And so on. Each hour marked by the soft chime of a clock in the common room. I played along, joining the other residents for bingo, nodding politely during group conversations, and letting the staff think I was just another lonely old man settling into his final chapter. But inside, I was anything but settled. My mind churned, mapping out every detail of the facility, every face, every flaw in the system I'd built. Sunset Pines was one of Horizon Care's flagship locations, designed to be a model of compassion and efficiency. I'd poured my heart into making it a place where people could live with dignity, not just survive. But even the best systems have cracks, and I saw them now under staffed shifts, rushed meals, residents left alone for too long. Small things, but they grated on me. This was my legacy, and it wasn't perfect. Not yet. Margaret called me every evening, her voice a lifeline in the sterile quiet of my room. I've been digging into the operations reports, she said one night, her tone brisk but warm. Sunset Pines is still profitable, but the board's been cutting corners. Fewer nurses, cheaper supplies. They think you're out of the picture. Harold. They're about to find out I'm not, I replied, keeping my voice low. The walls here weren't thick, and I didn't trust the staff not to gossip. Can you get me the financials? And the personnel files? I want to know who's running this place day to day. Already on it, she said. I'll have them sent to your email. Discreetly. Of course. Margaret was a godsend. She'd been with me since Horizon Care was just a dream scribbled on napkins in a diner. When my wife, Clara, died 20 years ago, Margaret had been the one to keep me going, to remind me why I'd started this company. She wasn't just an employee, she was family, more so than Emily had been in years. I spent my days observing, blending in, learning. The head nurse, Patricia, was competent but overstretched. Her smile strained as she juggled too many patients. The activities coordinator, a young man named Tom, was enthusiastic but inexperienced, often leaving residents confused during crafts or games. And then there was Mr. Jenkins, a resident in his 90s who spent most of his time staring out the window, muttering about his son who never visited. I recognized the look in his eyes' abandonment. It mirrored my own. One afternoon, during a particularly tedious card game, I struck up a conversation with Mr. Jenkins. He was hunched over in his wheelchair, his hands trembling as he tried to hold his cards. "You ever think about getting out of here?" I asked, keeping my tone light. He chuckled. A dry, raspy sound. "Where would I go? Son, my boy's got his own life now. Doesn't need an old man slowing him down." I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "What if you could make things better? Not just for you, but for everyone here." His eyes narrowed, sharp despite his age. "You talking crazy, Grayson? What's an old coot like you gonna do?" I smiled, tapping my cane against the floor. "You'd be surprised." That evening, I sat at the small desk in my room, poring over the files Margaret had sent. The financials confirmed what she'd said: budget cuts had eroded the quality of care. The personnel files were even more telling. The facility manager, a man named Richard Holt, was new, hired by the board after I'd stepped back. His resume was impressive, but his performance reviews were lackluster. Complaints about his attitude, his tendency to prioritize profits over people. My kind of manager. He was not. I made a note to meet him. If I was going to take back control, I needed to know who I was dealing with. The next morning, I requested a meeting with Richard. Sarah, the nurse, looked surprised but arranged it. "He's busy, Mr. Grayson, but I'm sure he'll make time," she said, her optimism almost painful. Richard's office was at the end of the administrative wing, a stark contrast to the residents' rooms. Polished wood, leather chairs, a view of the front lawn instead of the garden. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Grayson," he said, shaking my hand with a grip that was too firm, too calculated. "What can I do for you?" "Settling in okay." "I'm managing," I said, easing into the chair across from his desk. "Just wanted to get to know the man running the show. Sunset Pines is special to me." He raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair. "Oh, you've got a history with the place." "You could say that." I kept my tone neutral, my eyes locked on his. "I've got a vested interest in how things are run here. Quality of care, staff morale, that sort of thing." His smile faltered, just for a second. "We're doing just fine, Mr. Grayson. Best facility in the state, according to the latest reviews." "Reviews can be bought," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "Best doesn't mean perfect. I've noticed some areas that could use improvement." He laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "With all due respect, Mr. Grayson, you're a resident, not an inspector. Leave the management to me." I nodded, standing slowly, leaning on my cane. "Fair enough. But I've got a long memory, Richard, and I don't forget what matters." As I left his office, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Emily thought she'd put me out to pasture. Richard thought I was just another old man to ignore. They were both wrong. Sunset Pines was mine, and I was going to take it back one step at a time. The days at Sunset Pines began to take on a rhythm, but I wasn't here to settle into routines. I was here to shake things up. My conversations with Mr. Jenkins grew longer, more purposeful. He was sharp, despite his frail body, and he knew more about the residents than anyone else. Mrs. Carter in room 12. He told me one evening over a game of checkers. She's got a daughter who sends money but never visits. And Eddie, the janitor, he's got a good heart, but he's scared of losing his job. I listened, filing away every detail. If I was going to fix this place, I needed allies, people who saw what I saw, who cared enough to fight for change. Mr. Jenkins was my first recruit, whether he knew it or not. I started small, talking to residents during meals, asking about their lives, their families, their complaints. Most were hesitant at first, wary of stirring trouble, but the more I listened, the more they opened up. Mrs. Carter spoke of cold meals and rushed nurses. Mr. Lopez, a retired teacher, complained about the lack of books in the library. Little by little, I built a picture of Sunset Pines, not the polished brochure version, but the real one, where people felt forgotten. Sarah, the young nurse, was my next target. She was kind, but overworked, her shifts often stretching into overtime. One afternoon, I found her in the break room, sipping coffee and rubbing her temples. Long day, I asked, easing into a chair across from her. She smiled, but it was tired. They're all long. Mr. Grayson, we're short-staffed again. That's no way to run a place like this, I said, keeping my tone gentle. You ever think about what it'd take to make things better? She sighed, setting her cup down. More staff, for one, and better training. Some of the aides don't know how to handle dementia patients. But Mr. Holt says the budget's tight. I nodded, letting her words sink in. If you could change one thing, Sarah, what would it be? She hesitated, then leaned forward. I'd make sure everyone gets time. Real time. Not just a quick check-in. These people deserve to feel like they matter. Her words hit me hard. That was why I'd built Horizon Care in the first Placido, make people feel like they mattered. Somewhere along the way, that mission had been diluted, twisted by boardroom decisions and profit margins. I thanked Sarah and left her to her coffee, my resolve hardening. That night, I called Margaret again. I need you to set up a meeting with the board, I said. In person. Next week. Harold, are you sure? Her voice was cautious. You've been out of the game for a while. They're not going to like you stirring things up. Let them squirm, I said. I own 51% of this company. They don't get to ignore me. Margaret chuckled. A low, approving sound. There's the Harold I know. I'll make it happen. The next day, I met Richard again, this time in the dining hall. He was making his rounds, shaking hands, playing the part of the caring manager. I waited until he was alone, then approached. Richard, a word. He turned, his smile tight. Mr. Grayson, what's on your mind? I've been talking to the residents, I said, keeping my voice low. They're not happy. Cold food, not enough staff, activities that don't engage them. You're cutting corners, and it shows. His eyes narrowed, but he kept his tone polite. I appreciate your concern, but we're doing our best with what we've got. Budgets are tight. Then loosen them, I said, stepping closer. This place is supposed to be a home, not a warehouse. Fix it, or I will. He laughed, but it was nervous. You're a resident, Mr. Grayson. You don't get to make demands. I smiled, leaning on my cane. We'll see about that. Over the next few days, I kept building my network. Eddie, the janitor, was shy but eager to help once I promised no one would lose their job. Mrs. Carter agreed to speak up at the next resident council meeting. Even Mr. Lopez, the retired teacher, offered to draft a list of improvements for the library. Slowly, the pieces were coming together. But I couldn't do this alone. I needed to confront Emily, to understand why she'd abandoned me here. I called her, leaving a voicemail when she didn't answer. Emily, it's Dad. We need to talk. I'm at Sunset Pines, but I'm not going anywhere. Call me. She didn't call back. I wasn't surprised, but it still hurt. I'd raised her to be better than this, to value family, to fight for what mattered. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost her, but I wasn't giving up, not on her, and not on Sunset Pines. By the end of the week, I had a plan. The board meeting was set, and I'd be there, unannounced, to remind them who was really in charge. Richard could play his games. Emily could run from her guilt. But I was Harold Grayson. I'd built this company from nothing, and I wasn't about to let Ida, my daughter, slip away without a fight. The board meeting was held in a sleek conference room at Horizon Care's headquarters, a 40-minute drive from Sunset Pines. Margaret arranged for a car to pick me up, discreetly, so Richard wouldn't catch wind of my plans. I dressed carefully that morning, choosing a suit I hadn't worn in years. One Clara had picked out for me when we celebrated the opening of our first facility. It still fit, though it hung a little looser now. The mirror showed a man who looked older than I felt, but the fire in my eyes was the same. The boardroom was all glass and chrome, a far cry from the modest offices I'd started with. 7 men and women sat around the polished table, their faces a mix of curiosity and annoyance when I walked in. Leaning on my cane, Margaret stood at the head of the table, her expression unreadable but her eyes gleaming with quiet pride. Harold, one of the board members, a man named Charles, sputtered, "What are you doing here?" I took my time settling into a chair, letting the silence stretch. "I own 51% of this company," I said finally, my voice steady. "I think that entitles me to a seat at the table." The room went quiet, the air thick with tension. Charles shifted uncomfortably, while the others exchanged glances. Margaret cleared her throat. "Harold has concerns about the operations at Sunset Pines. I think we should hear him out." I laid out everything I'd seen: the understaffing, the rushed care, the residents' complaints. I spoke of Sarah's exhaustion, Mr. Jenkins' loneliness, Mrs. Carter's cold meals. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. The numbers backed me up. Thanks to Margaret's reports, profits were up, but resident satisfaction was down. Staff turnover was climbing. This wasn't the Horizon Care I'd built. Charles leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Harold, we appreciate your passion, but you've been retired for years. The industry's changed. We're competing with bigger players now, and we have to make tough calls." "Tough calls," I repeated, my voice sharp. "Like cutting nurses to save a few bucks. Like letting people like Mr. Jenkins sit alone all day because no one has time to talk to him. That's not competition, Charles. That's neglect." The room fell silent again. Finally, a woman named Linda spoke up. "What are you proposing, Harold?" "A full audit," I said, "of Sunset Pines and every other facility. I want new budgets, more staff, better training, and I want Richard Holt gone. He's not running my home the way it should be run." The board erupted in murmurs, but I didn't back down. I'd spent decades building this company, pouring my heart into it. I wasn't about to let it crumble now. When I returned to Sunset Pines that evening, I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. The board hadn't agreed to everything not yet, but they'd promised to review my proposals. Margaret would make sure they followed through. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in control again. But Emily was still a loose end. I tried calling her again. And this time, she picked up. "Dad," she said. Her voice clipped. "I'm busy. What do you want?" "I want to see you," I said. "Come to Sunset Pines. We need to talk." There was a long pause. Then a sigh. "Fine. I'll come tomorrow." The next day, I waited in the garden, the roses bright against the gray sky. Emily arrived just after lunch, looking out of place in her tailored coat and heels. She sat across from me, her arms crossed, her face a mask of impatience. "Why am I here, Dad?" she asked. "I told you. Sunset Pines is a good place. You're safe here." "Safe," I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. "Is that what you call leaving me here without a backward glance? Emily, I raised you better than this." Her eyes flashed, but she didn't speak. I leaned forward, my voice low. "You think you can just walk away? Pretend I don't exist? I'm still your father, and I'm not as powerless as you think." She frowned, confusion flickering across her face. "What are you talking about?" "I own Horizon Care," I said, watching her reaction. "Sunset Pines is mine, and I'm not going anywhere until I fix what's broken here. And between us." Her face paled, her mouth opening and closing without a sound. For the first time, I saw something like fear in her eyes. Not fear of me, but of the truth that she'd underestimated me, that I wasn't the frail old man she'd written off. "Emily," I said, softer now, "I don't want to fight you. I want my daughter back. But you need to decide what kind of person you want to be." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the stone path. "I need to go," she muttered, and walked away, her heels clicking faster this time. I watched her go, my heart heavy but not broken. I'd given her something to think about. Whether she'd come around was up to her. But I wasn't done trying. Not yet. The weeks that followed were a blur of action. The board approved my audit, and Margaret oversaw it with her usual precision. Inspectors descended on Sunset Pines, interviewing staff, reviewing records, observing daily operations. Richard Holt was quietly let go, replaced by a woman named Clara, named after my late wife, which felt like a sign. Clara was a former nurse with a no-nonsense attitude and a genuine care for the residents. I liked her immediately. I worked behind the scenes, meeting with Sarah and Eddie, organizing resident feedback sessions, even helping Mr. Lopez stock the library with new books. Slowly, Sunset Pines began to change. Meals arrived hot. Staff schedules were adjusted to reduce burnout, and activities became more engaging. Mr. Jenkins started joining the morning walks, his grumbling replaced by cautious optimism. But the biggest change was in me. I wasn't just a resident anymore, I was a leader again. Even if no one but Margaret and a few others knew the full extent of my influence. I kept my ownership of Horizon Care quiet, letting Clara take the credit for the improvements. It wasn't about ego. It was about results. Emily didn't visit again, but she called once, her voice hesitant. "Dad, I heard Sunset Pines is doing better. People are talking about it online." "Good," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "It's what I always wanted." Another pause. Then, "I'm sorry, Dad, for everything." I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in. "I know, Emily. But sorry's just a start. Come see me when you're ready to talk for real." She didn't promise, but she didn't hang up either. It was progress, small but real. One evening, as I sat in the garden with Mr. Jenkins, he turned to me, his eyes sharp. "You're not just some old man, are you, Grayson?" I chuckled, tapping my cane. "Never was, Jenkins. Never will be. He nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. Good. Keep it that way. The changes at Sunset Pines weren't perfect, but they were a start. I'd taken back my legacy, piece by piece, and I wasn't done yet. There were other facilities to fix, other residents to listen to, other battles to fight. And maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to fix things with Emily. Months passed, and Sunset Pines became a beacon of what Horizon Care could be. The audit's findings led to sweeping changes across all our facilities: more staff, better training, a renewed focus on dignity. I stayed at Sunset Pines, not because I had to, but because it felt right. This was my home now, not just a place to wait out my days, but a place to make a difference. I saw Emily again on a crisp fall morning. She arrived unannounced, her face softer than I'd seen it in years. We sat in the garden, the roses now fading but still beautiful. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling. I was wrong. About everything. I thought I was doing the right thing. But I was selfish. I was angry. I reached for her hand, my own trembling slightly. "We all make mistakes. Emily, what matters is what you do next." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Can we start over?" I smiled, squeezing her hand. "We already have." We talked for hours that day. About Clara. About the past. About the future. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Emily started visiting regularly, bringing her kids, my grandkids, who filled the garden with laughter. Sunset Pines wasn't just a nursing home, Anna Maria, it was a community, a family. I never told the residents I owned Horizon Care. It didn't matter. What mattered was the warmth in Sarah's smile when she had time to sit with a patient, the pride in Mr. Lopez's voice when he read to the group, the way Mr. Jenkins stood a little taller when his son finally visited. As winter approached, I sat by my window, watching the first snowflakes fall. My cane rested against the wall, my phone silent for the first time in weeks. I'd fought for this place, for these people, for myself. And I'd won not just for Sunset Pines, but for the man I'd always been. Emily was coming for Christmas. She'd promised. And for the first time in years, I believed her. The road ahead wasn't easy, but it was ours. And that was enough.